Today on the Daily Dose, Hiroshima, the day the world went nuclear. In July of 1945, after the Allies' defeat of Germany in Europe, physicists involved in America's top-secret Manhattan Project completed its first successful detonation of a plutonium nuclear bomb at the Trinity test site near Alamogordo, New Mexico. Japan, however, despite mounting evidence of her impending defeat, vowed to carry the fight to the bitter end in the Pacific, rejecting Allied demands for surrender as put forth in the Potsdam Declaration, which threatened Japanese leaders with prompt and utter destruction should they opt to refuse. In advance of an anticipated land invasion of the Empire of Japan, codenamed Operation Downfall, an invasion that would cost an estimated 1 million Allied lives, President Harry S. Truman decided over the moral reservations of Secretary of War Henry Stimson that a nuclear bomb detonation over a Japanese city would end Japan's belligerency once and for all. In response, war planners chose the city of Hiroshima, a manufacturing center some 500 miles west of Tokyo, with an estimated population of some 350,000 lives. After the 9,000-pound enriched uranium bomb, codenamed Little Boy, had been delivered to the Pacific island of Tinian and loaded aboard a modified B-29 christened Enola Gay, so named after the mother of its pilot, Colonel Paul Tibbets. On the morning of August 6, 1945, Little Boy was dropped by parachute over Hiroshima, detonating at an altitude of 2,000 feet, instantly leveling 1 square mile of Hiroshima's city center, while fires caused by the detonation destroyed another 4 square miles in the days to come. The first nuclear bomb dropped on humans detonated with the equivalent force of 15,000 tons of TNT, forming a mushroom cloud roughly 60,000 feet tall, at the same time killing 80,000 to 126,000 people, while leaving many more thousands with burns and other life-threatening injuries. Birth defects and an array of cancers would plague local survivors for generations to come. After Japan's continued belligerence, a second more complex plutonium-239 nuclear bomb, codenamed Fat Boy, was dropped on Nagasaki, killing an estimated 39,000 to 80,000 people, while many thousands more suffered the same catastrophic burns and injuries as the victims of Hiroshima. That same day, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, leading to Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945, at the same time setting in motion a new form of geopolitical tension as Cold War superpowers developed nuclear arsenals under the ongoing threat of mutually assured destruction, making the day the world went nuclear a seemingly irreversible turning point in the history of man's ongoing inhumanity of war. Today on the Daily Dose, Operation Paperclip. As World War II approached its endgame in Europe, members of the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee followed advancing Allied troops across Germany, interrogating scientists in research facilities seized by Allied forces. After a list of Third Reich scientists and engineers was discovered in a Bonn University toilet, the newly formed Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency began ferrying German scientists and their families to the United States with the intent of harnessing German intellectual resources in the fields of rocketry, aeronautics, and biological warfare techniques. In a covert program known as Operation Paperclip, approximately 1,600 German scientists were relocated to the United States, not only to strengthen American technical and scientific know-how, but also to ensure such coveted talent and information would never fall into the hands of the Soviet Union. While President Harry S. Truman unofficially supported the operation, he banned the agency from recruiting active Nazi sympathizers. Although the Office of Strategic Services, which would later become the CIA, largely circumvented Truman's edict by removing evidence of possible war crimes from a given scientist's official record. Perhaps the most notable recruit brought to America under Operation Paperclip was Wernher von Braun, who had been the technical director at the Peenemünde Army Research Center in Germany, where the V-2 rocket was developed, which would rain death and destruction on Great Britain during the early years of the war. Von Braun and his fellow scientists were relocated to Fort Bliss, Texas, and White Sands Proving Grounds in New Mexico, where they helped the U.S. Army develop ever-increasing proficiency in rocket-propelled flight. Classified as War Department Special Employees, von Braun would later become the director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, as well as the chief architect of the Saturn V rocket, which would safely launch 24 astronauts on their quest to orbit and land on the moon. While supporters of Operation Paperclip maintain that the balance of power during the Cold War could easily have tilted toward the Soviets if these post-Nazi scientists had fallen into Russian hands. Detractors, on the other hand, point to an ethical lapse on the part of American government officials, who blatantly ignored the war crimes committed directly or indirectly by Paperclip scientists, who were in effect handed a get-out-of-jail-free card without punishment or accountability. Today on the Daily Dose, the Berlin Airlift. After Berlin fell to the Russians in May of 1945, Germany lay powerless as the victorious Allies carved up the nation into 4 zones of occupation, including the 4 control zone sectors in Berlin, which as a whole lay in the Soviet sector. 3 years later, another battle would be fought in Berlin, this time a battle of political ideology, as well as the first significant chapter in the 43-year-long Cold War. For the first 2 months after the surrender of Germany, the Russians were the sole occupiers of Berlin, who made sincere strides to get the bombed-out and war-weary citizens of Berlin back on their feet again. On July 1, 1945, American, French, and British garrisons moved into their sectors of the city, and while comradeship between the victors of World War II appeared amicable at first, conflict soon began to erode trust between the Soviets and the Western powers. The Russians proposed that the biggest socialist party of Germany should combine with the Communist Party, but the socialists in the Western sector insisted on putting the issue to a vote, suspecting that unity with the Communists would eventually lead to unity under the Communists. The majority vote turned away from the Soviets, and since the Soviets had suffered egregious losses to German aggression in both world wars, Stalin was determined to turn Eastern Europe into a buffer zone to protect Russia from future Aryan hostilities. After the United States, France, and Britain combined their sectors of Germany to create a separate Western state, the days of participation between the Soviets and Western powers rapidly disintegrated. When the Western powers replaced the grossly inflated German currency with the Deutschmark, a currency that was only valid in West Germany, the first major act of the Cold War was officially on. On June 24, 1948, the Russians stopped all rail service into and out of West Berlin, while on August 24th, Autobahn and canal links were also blockaded, with the hope of starving Western powers out of Germany once and for all. In response, American and British air crews, along with 5 other lesser-involved Allied powers, began airlifting supplies for the 2 million Germans living in West Berlin, a monumental supply line feat that lasted until the Soviets ended their blockade on September 30th, 1949. While the original plan called for 3,476 tons of supplies delivered daily, by the spring of 1949, that number would peak at 12,941 daily tons of coal and inbound essentials. The U.S. Air Force delivered 1,783,573 tons of supplies, while the RAF delivered 541,937 tons. The Berlin Airlift flew over 92 million miles, while at the height of the operation, one cargo plane landed in West Berlin every 30 seconds. The Berlin blockade served to highlight the competing ideological visions for post-war Europe, while playing a major role in drawing West Germany into NATO's orbit several years later in 1955. Today in the Daily Dose, the Truman Doctrine. Buried in debt caused by their participation in World War II. In February of 1947, Britain announced to the United States that it could no longer provide military and economic aid to Turkey and Greece, which led the Truman administration to fear that both nations were under threat by the Soviets for communist expansion and aggression. Leftist forces in Greece had conducted ongoing battles with the Greek royal government since the end of World War II, while the Soviets were pushing for greater control over the Dardanelles, which was a strategic waterway connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. In a speech delivered on March 12, 1947, before a joint session of Congress, President Harry S. Truman pledged to contain the spread of communism in both Turkey and Greece, declaring it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressure. He went on to say that nations could adopt a way of life based upon the will of the majority, which allowed governments to provide guarantees of individual liberty, or face an opposite way of life based upon the will of a minority forcibly imposed upon the majority. Considered by most historians to be the starting point of the Cold War, Congress soon appropriated $400 million in aid to both Turkey and Greece, while establishing U.S. Cold War foreign policy in a proactive attempt to protect nations against communist aggression. While Truman's logic successfully convinced many Americans that the United States was locked in a life-and-death struggle against the spread of communism, not everyone embraced the Truman Doctrine as gospel truth. Upon closer examination, many saw that the insurgency in Greece was supported by the Tito regime in Yugoslavia, who was in the process of breaking from the Soviets shortly after Truman's anti-communist declarations had been made, while the Soviets were not demanding outright control over the Dardanelles, but were merely seeking assurances that they would not be denied access to the waterway, as the Nazis had done in World War II. In the end, despite hefty infusions of cash into the economies of Greece and Turkey, both nations drifted into repressive right-wing regimes in the years following the Truman Doctrine, setting the United States and the Soviet Union on a costly 40-year Cold War path of puppet wars around the world, all the while cloaked under the underlying fear of mutually assured nuclear destruction. Today in the Daily Dose, the Domino Theory of the Cold War. Considered the primary impetus behind the Vietnam War, the Domino Theory was a Cold War misperception that when one nation embraced communist doctrine, then neighboring nations would succumb to the same fate, like dominoes falling in a row. The theory gained increasing importance as war in Southeast Asia escalated from one American presidency to the next, resulting in a protracted, costly war for all sides involved. In September of 1945, Vietnamese nationalist leader Ho Chi Minh proclaimed independence from France, igniting a war between Ming's communist Viet Minh regime in North Vietnam against the French-backed regime in the South. Under the Truman administration, the U.S. government infused covert military and financial aid to the French-backed ARVN, or Army of the Republic of Vietnam, under the rationale that a Ho Chi Minh victory would spread communism throughout Southeast Asia. The domino theory became so well ingrained amongst American leaders that the National Security Council highlighted the theory in a 1952 report on Indochina. While Truman invoked the same rationale when the U.S. funneled covert aid to Greece and Turkey in the late 1940s in an attempt to curb the spread of communism in Europe and the Middle East. After President Dwight D. Eisenhower referenced the term Domino Theory in a speech, the phrase became a shorthand for the importance of driving communism out of Indochina, as well as the need for similar vigilance in other communist hotspots around the world. The Vietnam War would continue to escalate until the Nixon administration and the fall of Saigon in 1975, which in turn debunked the domino theory when communism failed to spread throughout Indochina, as Western leaders had originally feared. With the exception of Laos and Cambodia, the remaining nations of Southeast Asia remained outside the realm and spread of communism. Today in the Daily Dose, the Cold War. After the Americans ended World War II with back-to-back nuclear detonations over Japan, soon after Japan's surrender, the United States and wartime ally the Soviet Union began a 45-year-long Cold War that saw the world teeter repeatedly on the brink of mutually assured nuclear annihilation. Beginning in early 1947, President Harry S. Truman announced his Truman Doctrine, which ultimately pushed back against Russian-sponsored communist insurgencies in Turkey and Greece, igniting an arms race between the two superpowers, as well as the creation and detonation of atomic bombs far more powerful than those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As the ever-present threat of nuclear destruction raised the anxiety levels of average Americans in the 1950s and 60s, Americans built bomb shelters and practiced attack drills in schools and other public places, reaching its zenith with the botched Bay of Pigs invasion of 1961, followed by the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. The Cold War also led to proxy wars between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, first in Korea from 1950 to 1953, then in Vietnam from 1955 to the fall of Saigon in 1975. Others include the Chinese Civil War of 1944 to 49, the Iran Crisis of 1946, the Paraguayan Civil War of 1947, the Malayan Emergency of 1948 to 1960, and some 50 more regional proxy wars during the Cold War era. The Cold War also launched the space race, beginning with the Soviet Union's early lead in their 1957 launch of Sputnik, and ending when Americans repeatedly inhabited the moon. It also sparked the Second Red Scare in America, beginning in 1947, leading to congressional hearings into possible communist subversives in Hollywood and beyond, culminating in an anti-communist witch hunt led by Senator Joseph McCarthy, which cost hundreds of people their jobs and reputations during a dark period known as McCarthyism. After years of political stalemate, economic stagnation, and ethnic separatism, by the late 1980s, General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev instituted a series of political and economic reforms to shore up the Soviet Union's steady downward fall, infusing the nation's historic command economy with elements of liberal Western economics. By late 1991, however, Gorbachev's glasnost perestroika reforms had failed amidst catastrophic political and social pressures, leading to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, which granted independence and sovereign rule to the 15 republics that made up the former USSR, making the Cold War one of the most dangerous times in recorded human history. And there you have it, the Cold War, today in the Daily Dose. If you like learning something new every day, subscribe to the Daily Dose on YouTube or sign up for emails at dailydosenow.com.